Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Nahmaduhu wa nusalli ala rasulil kareem amma ba'd. Like we discussed earlier, the condition of contracts. Now, in this class today, we are going to talk about the classification of contracts. So, as I told you in the last class, that all these sections, it comes under, all these sections come under the theory of contract, like we discussed pillars, and then purpose and effect, and then we talked about the conditions. Now, it is the same thing that whatever that we learned earlier, it's not something new, but we are putting into a classification. Like I told you some time ago, an example of, you have lots and lots of clothes, and then you want to keep it in your closet. You always keep it, you categorize it, right? You classify it, meaning to say, you will put it one place. This is official, this is personal, these are the swimming suit, these are the play the sports dresses, and this is the occasional dresses, this is the wedding dresses. This is how you categorize it, right? So now the entire transactions that so far we discussed, we want to put it into five different categories. All right, that's as simple as that. So let us get into that. Number one is actually based on the characteristics. All right, so how do you define uh, the characteristic? Based on the characteristic, because let's say you want to talk about a transaction, whether it has a valid character or invalid character. So I think it could be only two, meaning whether the contract, the transaction is a sahih, whether the transaction is accepted characteristic, or it is a non-accepted characteristics. You got what I'm saying? So looking into characteristics, contracts may be divided into two types, namely valid and invalid, right? As simple as that. A valid contract means what? Which fulfill all the pillars. All the pillars are correct. And then all the conditions, like the Sharia conditions, whatever the conditions that we made, which actually stipulated by the Sharia, right? We talked about the four kind of conditions, right? All these met. All these conditions are met. Number two, a void contract, which is actually the Batil characteristic, is a contract when one of the pillar is missing or some conditions are missing. So you know what happens when one of the pillar is missing, then that contract will become what? Invalid. You got what I'm saying? So this is what actually we called a void. Okay, here is the thing. Now, according to the majority, this is only two. All right, whether it is a sahih or batil, whether it is a valid or invalid. But according to the Hanafis, this is something different. It is also quite interesting to know. They say it is three. Remember when they talk about the pillars, they had some differences, and those differences actually help us, in a way that we can develop the modern transactions. The same thing goes here. According to Hanafi, it is not two, it is three. All right. So, meaning to say, the first one, they agreed valid and void. They agreed the sahih and the batil, but they brings in between valid and void, they bring irregular. So this is how they do. You can say majority, valid, invalid. Hanafi, they have valid, and again they have a batil, void, then they have a fasid. All right. Fasid means what? Irregular. So now I don't have to explain to you what is sahih, what is batil. You already know that. But in order to understand fasid, we have to look all these three together. All right. So let us see what is it exactly fasid. Okay. You see, there are, when you look into the essential elements of a contract, there will be asl and there will be a wasf. What exactly means asl and wasf? Asl means something that, something that always there, or something that the most important element in that transaction comes as a asl. Asl refers to the essential elements which according to the Hanafis are offer and acceptance. Now you understand that when we talk about the pillars of the contract, do you remember that how many pillars of the contract according to Hanafi? It is two. All right. So, which means they say acceptance and offer, ijab and qabul is actually, this is the two pillars of the contract. Remember at the same time, according to the majority, that is actually the first pillar of the contract, because according to the majority, they say accept and offer, it is called expression. It is called expression. This is what we talked about it. How? Three pillars, right? How, what, how, who, and what. So how refers to expression. In Arabic, it is called sigha. So now you can clearly see that the differences between a majority and Hanafis. Now, according to Hanafi, there is a asl, there is a wasf. Hmm? Asl means the basic, the original, the basic. Wasf means the attributes, additional, which something comes outside. So essential element, it is called asl, and external attributes, it is called wasf. So now, according to Hanafi, offer and acceptance, these are the two pillars of the contract. So now they say this is called asl. The other pillars, according to the majority scholars, whether it is who and or it is what, uh, who and what, I mean the parties and the subject matter, will become external attributes. All right. So now let us talk about what exactly irregular, what exactly fasid. Fasid means, according to Hanafi, when its essential elements are present, all the essential conditions are complete, but it contains a prohibited attribute. Huh? It contains a prohibited attribute. Very good example is actually when there is a transaction is happening, but there is an element of usuri, or when a contract suffers from a gharar, such as when a certain property is sold for an unknown price. So now there is a sale going on, mm, and the seller, you want to buy you want to buy a product, you are really, interested in buying in a way that you decided that whatever price goes, whatever is the price, sometimes people are crazy about things and they really want it, or maybe it's a really need. So we don't have to call them crazy, maybe it's essential, they need. So now they are ready to pay any amount. They are ready to pay any cost. They say, you name it, I will pay it. So now, let's say there is a land that they wanted to buy, but the seller he didn't tell the price yet. Yeah, the land is the land is for sale, but for unknown price. According to the majority scholar, according to the majority, you cannot have any transaction, because because the pillar number 3 is what? Mabi'a. The pillar number 3 is actually the subject matter. If you do not determine the price of the subject matter, if you do not determine, if you do not specify, if you do not name the price of the subject matter, then you are not able to make the transaction. So now, as I told you earlier, price comes under the subject matter according to the majority, and then the subject matter comes under the pillars of the contract. Now, there is no way that this transaction can happen. The transaction cannot happen. That's the reason why, you know, I can give you a very good example. I think some of you know recently what happened. I will come back to that example. Let me tell you this, the difference. So now, if that product, particular product is not known, then the price is not known, then according to the majority scholar, the transaction cannot happen. Now, coming back to Hanafi, if you see, according to Hanafi, the knowing the price of the product, it comes under wasaf. It doesn't come under asl. Understand? Because the price comes under the third pillar of the contract according to the majority, which is a subject matter. But this a subject matter, it is not one of the pillars according to the Hanafi. So this subject matter becomes what? Wasaf, not asl. All right. Now, according to the Hanafi, they say this transaction will be fasid. This transaction will be fasid. It will not become batil, like what majority says, it is batil. But according to Imam Hanafis, it is called fasid. Now, then you might be asking me, what exactly the difference? So what is the end result between a fasid and a batil? Both of them is wrong, right? This is what you might be asking. There is a difference. The different the difference is, if there is a transaction which is fasid, uh, which is irregular, you actually can make it sahih by knowing the price. The moment you know the price, uh, if that prohibited attribute, if you can remove the prohibited attribute, then you will be able to continue the transaction. You don't have to cancel or batil the transaction. What I'm saying? The same thing goes to, if someone bought it something as a mistake, or maybe someone bought it because someone pushed him to buy. Now you know that if there is no mutual consent, which is actually the parties' mutual consents, or maybe the party himself, is not actually a complete adult to do the transaction. In any problem that comes to the parties, if that one can be, if those problems, if those problems can be corrected, can be altered, can be modified, then according to Hanafi, this is a fasid transaction, can become sahih, can become valid transaction. For example, if the minor started a transaction, which is actually good, but it will be fasid until the guardian comes and he complete the transaction. Minor may have started it, all right, but of course it is according to Hanafi fasid, but this fasid can become sahih if the guardian comes and he approves it. All right, if someone bought something under the duress, hmm, and he thought that someone made him buy, someone pushed him buy, which comes under duress, we talked about earlier. which comes under fictitious contract. But but if later he realized that that one is, even though it looks like duress, it is good for me. Sometimes we don't know what is good for us, and someone keep on telling us, and we do. And later we realize that, this is very good. See, I told you so. Huh? I told you this. I told you that. Which means, if you bought that land, it would have been a very good, safe and secure property for you, right? These are the things, in dialogues. Usually we have this conversation with especially with elders. Yeah. So what I'm trying to tell, that if you can change those facet, I mean, if you can change those prohibited attribute, then the transaction can become sahih. Now, I want to give you the very good recent example for this. Huh? I think most of you know about the latest Proton X50. Do you know that? I think some of you have seen the advertisement, and at the beginning of the advertisement, when they launch, they didn't launch they didn't launch. I mean, of course, they launch the car, but they don't have the stock. The stock has to come. Now they open for booking. All right. They ask everybody, whoever wants to buy, because the car is very good. People saw it. Proton X50 comes after X70. So this car is similar to, the other company's car, but at the cheap, it's a cheaper version of the other car, but at the same time it's a very good car. Now the problem comes when people started paying the deposit, but the real price of the car was unknown. Remember, the moment that they started giving the deposit, the real price of the car was unknown, because the Proton didn't decide the car price yet. They only revealed after maybe like 2, 3, 4 weeks. I don't know how long, maybe. But the question comes, can I make this booking for 500? Now you can clearly see, according to majority scholar, it is not possible, because you don't know the price of the car. If you don't know the price of the car, how you can actually initiate the transaction? But now, according to Hanafi, you can initiate the transaction. It will be facet until you know the price. If you know the price, the moment you know the price and you accept the price, and then the transaction can become sahih. All right. I hope you got the idea. So similarly, a contract is considered irregular when it is made with a defective consent, like I told you just now, a person under duress. A contract is also irregular if the parties agree on void conditions. All these conditions render a particular contract irregular. Irregular contracts do not have legal effect. However, the contract could be corrected. See the word corrected, could be corrected when the prohibited attributes are removed. Invalid or void contract, according to Hanafi, is a contract where one of the pillar of their condition is defective. For example, as the sale of a person who has no competence, or when a contract is concluded for unlawful purposes. So all these things, like as others also, they're saying the same thing. These contract are a prohibited contract, and as such do not have any legal effect. All right. Now, we talked about the characteristics. Let's go to purpose and effect. I think you are quite familiar with this, because you are still doing your individual project paper, which I'm happy about it. I gave you some suggestions. Hope you are following. We will talk about it after this. Yeah. So now, these are the classifications. I actually brought this slide earlier in order to make you understand. But basically, the slide must come in this section. Classification based on the purpose and effect. Now you understand that there are so many purpose and effect. Different purposes could be the same, but the effects are different for each and everything. In acquiring ownership, the effect is effect is obtaining ownership, and then usufruct, and then if it comes to waiving the rights, and then authorization, and then you have imposing the restraints, and then you have the providing the security, and then you have the partnership, and then you have the safekeeping property, all right, or maybe isti'man, we called earlier insurance, everything comes under this. So you actually can classify the transactions according to the purpose and effect. As I told you, not necessarily all the purposes are same, all the effects are same. Each and every transaction is a different purpose, different effect. All right. Number three, which is
Hello,
classification. Yes.
Assalamualaikum.
Yeah.
Sir, I want
Yes,
to ask you
Amma.
something.
Go ahead. Go
How
ahead.
about the security guard fall under what contract? If we hire security guard or the security agencies to protect our life, falls
Hmm.
under which category? Which code?
Okay, there are a couple of options. There is, there is a labor as a service, and there is, you see, yeah, the security. Sometimes the security comes as a labor. Let's say, for example, you have a house and you ask someone to secure your house. You have a taman, you ask someone to secure your taman. Now, he will be doing the labor. It's like a service provider. Because if there is something happen, of course he is responsible, but he cannot pay back if someone came to the taman and took everything, and then someone came and then kill him and then take everything. Someone came and then he tied the security guard's hand and then took everything. The same thing goes to the any shop or any gold, silver, the places. This is like a labor. You need to understand this. There is another kind of security. The another kind of security is a company, is the idea of the security whereby they cover everything. Huh? They cover everything, meaning it's like a guarantorship. They say, okay, nothing can happen to your business, nothing can happen to your bank. If anything happen, we are responsible for it. But of course, you have to pay according to their promise. The payment that you do for the security guard, and then the payment you do for the security company is a different thing, right? So that is a different, because if something happened, these people will become responsible, and that company will become responsible whatever that they lost. So now the second one, as I told you, in as a company, it comes under number five, tawthiqat, providing security. It comes under kafala and hawala, right? The normal security guard that we have in our houses, these are the things will come under, like a service provider. It could be anything, like a service, like someone giving the services. These are the things will come as a labor. You got it?
Okay, sir. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. And then we go into number three, classification based on the time of execution. Okay, this is also very interesting classification. When you do the transaction, the effect might happen immediately, sometimes happen later. All not all the transactions are the same. Some transaction you do, but you will get the benefit later. You will get your your possessing later, not immediately. All right. Al-aqd al-munjaz. Hmm? This is the first one. We have three types. Contracts are divided based on the time when they would produce their legal effect after their conclusion. So now you can do the transaction, but the legal effect can happen now, or it can happen later. So accordingly, there are three types. The first one is al-aqd al-munjaz, immediate effect. The legal effect, the legal consequences will happen at the moment that you are concluding. For example, the sale. You buy the phone, right? Immediately the effect happen. Someone do the pledging, someone gifting to you. You are having a gift from someone, and then it's the immediately the effect has to happen. All right. If they are if they are postponed, the intended consequences are not attained immediately, and it is not allowed. In a sale contract, for example, it is not allowed to say, I sell my house to you next month. It is a promise. Promise cannot become the transaction, cannot become a sale. All right. This offer, even if accepted, is not valid as a sale contract, should result in the immediate transfer of ownership to the purchaser. All right. So now there is no future tense can be used. And if you do some sale, it has to happen immediately. All right. Then we have the next one. The legal effect will happen only in future, will not happen immediately. It's called al-aqd al-mudaf li al-mustaqbal. Mudaf means related, connected, attached to al-mustaqbal, meaning future. Contract, the effect of which could be postponed. These are contracts which may result in producing immediate legal effect, or the effects of which could be deferred to a future date. For example, kafala, hawala, wakala, and waqaf. You see, all these contracts, even you can add insurance, all right, because insurance, the effect is not going to happen immediately. It will happen only if something happened to your car, right? Kafala also something, you become the guarantor. You are not going to do the job immediately. It has to take some time. And also wakala, kafala, everything's like that. In contract of kafala, it is possible for a guarantor to say to the creditor that if the debtor could not settle the debt within 2 months, then the guarantor would settle it. At the expiry of the stipulated period, the contract of kafala becomes effective. Only that 2 months, after 2 months only, he has to do his job. Within these 2 months, he will be like everybody, right? Because that 2 months is given. If the buyer is not paying within the 2 months, then on the 61st day, you can come and ask me the money. This is what happens to. The same thing goes to hawala, wakala, even waqaf. You will say that, okay, I'm doing my wasiyah, that this property of mine will become waqaf after I die. So now, before you die, it is yours, but after you die, it goes. So now it is mustaqbal. All right. Okay. Now, number three. This is also quite interesting. This one happens only with conditions. If that conditions comes to alive, come to existence, then this transaction will happen. It's called al-aqd al-mu'allaq ala-shart, right? Meaning the contract, the effect of which could depend on conditions. So what are the conditions? These are the conditions. These are contingent contracts that may depend on the fulfillment of certain conditions. For example, the contracts of agency, wakala, the contract of bequest, wasiya, the contract of kafala and hawala, like earlier we talked, contingent contract could only produce their legal effect when certain conditions that are put by the parties are met. For example, if I travel, you will become my agent, right? So now I ask someone to become my agent. I ask someone to become my representative. But while I am available in country, I will do my job. If I'm not available, then the deputy will become acting dean. Hmm? The deputy prime minister will become the acting prime minister. The deputy president will become the acting president, right? The same thing goes to the CEO of the company, the director of the company, hmm? or anybody else doing the business, the owner and the labor. The labor can sign on his behalf, can do invoices, can sign on the invoices on behalf, can do the purchase on behalf. So this is all happens only only with certain conditions. Okay, if I, for example, if I die, then only. So these are the conditions can make the agency and kafala and wahala, sorry, kafala and hawala. So this is all comes based on the conditions. All right. I think that's all number three. Then we go to number four. Number four is actually talks about nomination and non-nomination. I think it's quite simple to understand. What I mean by nomination, if Sharia has already given a name for a transaction, whatever the Sharia given the name through fiqh, usul al-fiqh, you call it like mudaraba, musharaka, wadi'a, kafala, all these things is been there. Remember, this mudaraba, musharaka, this is not something that the Prophet started doing it. It's not. You see, this is we talk about business transaction. We cannot say that this business transaction started only after Islam, after Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam came. No, these transactions were there even before the advent of Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, because this is the people's life in Mecca and Medina, in the entire world, people were doing mudaraba and musharaka. The meaning of musharaka is a partnership. Mudaraba is two partners together, and then you have also muzara'a when you do agriculture in partnership, right? Then murabaha. All these things were there. It is simply a word, Arabic word for partnership. So this is where there before, even before the arrival of Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So now when Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam came, he regulated it. He removed the prohibited elements from these contracts. This is what the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam did in the market. So he introduced the Sharia, what they call it, the Sharia compliant. This is the Sharia compliant products. Then it became nominated products, nominated contracts. On the other hand, you have some contracts which are later introduced, especially like the insurance, the istisna by al-wafa, the takaful, which is insurance, all called non-nominated contracts. These non-nominated contracts will continue because tomorrow we are going to have a crypto, we have a cryptocurrency blockchain, and then we have AI and everything. The fintech is coming, all right, the financial technology is coming. You are going to see a different world, all right. All these things will come, and definitely this will come under non-nominated contract. Okay, I think okay, the last one, this is number five. The last one for today is actually classification based on the requirement of physical possession. Very simple. There are some transaction, there is a physical possession. There are some physical possession is not necessary. Physical transfer existence of a thing include the contract of the gift. All right. If I give you something as a gift, hiba, you have to acquire it. You have to possess it, like borrowing, like wadi'ah deposit, like qard loan, like rahn pledge. In this contract, all things, all the property should be physically be present and transferred. In all other contracts, other than these, the physical transfer, all right, of the property is not necessary as long as all the pillars of a contract are fulfilled. For example, there is a contract of ijara. Of course, you have your, you got your house, your the car for the rental, but physical transfer of usifrat is not there. You cannot physically, keep it with you. You have to wait until the end of the month. You have to enjoy the benefit of usifrat, and then there are so many other services. This is very simple to understand today. Today we are paying for services which we are not physically processing or physically transferring, right? The services we pay for internet, we pay we pay for the tuition fee, we pay for um, so many other services, including the insurance, including, the kafala and wakala. These are the things, not necessarily that you have to physically possess. Or maybe the possessing is actually different from other contracts like hiba and wadi'a and iara, right? So I think that's all from me today. So this is your attendance.